Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to our next session of the SE Bio webinar series. My name's Morgan Nichols, and I'm the Membership and Marketing Coordinator for SE Bio. And whether you are watching with us live on Zoom or watching at a pre-recorded link, we just want to say welcome. We're excited to have Delano Collins from Corsica Technologies this morning, and he has certainly got some wonderful news and some wonderful information and some relevant information to share with us this morning. But I just want to say on behalf of the SE Bio team, we hope you all are staying safe and healthy during these unprecedented times, and know our thoughts are with you all. So like I said, this morning we are excited to welcome our featured speaker, Delano Collins of Corsica Technologies. He is the Vice President of Corsica Technologies, and with the rise of everyone working from home and teleworking, he has some really important information to share on maintaining your cybersecurity while working from home. So without further ado, Delano, are you ready?
I am ready.
Awesome. We welcome you and are excited to see what you have to share with us this morning.
Thank you. All right, let me share my screen. Okay. Well, again, thank you so much for the opportunity to talk again. We love any platform to talk about cybersecurity, and it seems more relevant today than ever. Um, Again, let's see. There we go. This is my mugshot. I am somewhat of a man of many hats. I'm currently the Vice President of Cybersecurity at Corsica Technologies. I have in my past been an Information Security Officer, a Chief Information Officer, a couple of directors, and a system administrator at a regional bank. So it seems like wherever I go, security is there, and I can't seem to get away from it. Um, if I were to tell you that businesses of all size today are facing an increasing number and variety of cyber attacks with a concerning degree of success and regularity, I don't think that would surprise any of you. But according to the Alliance Global Risk Barometer for 2020, cyber incidents have become the #1 business risk. And of those cyber risks, the top 5 right now are ransomware, phishing, data leakage, hacking, and insider threat. So just to make sure we're all talking the same language, ransomware, again, that's just a form of malware that's going to encrypt files where someone's going to demand a ransom to restore access to your files. And then phishing emails are basically, it's fraudulent emails purporting to be from a reputable company in order to get you to click on something, divulge information such as passwords or credit card numbers. Again, data leakage is any unauthorized transmission of data from within your organization to external or unauthorized recipients. Hacking is the unauthorized access to data or your systems. And then insider threats, again, is it's malicious or accidental actions by your employees who cause data leakage or some other type of reputational damage to your organization. But right now, with COVID-19, a lot of companies are extremely focused on trying to respond to the challenges that we're seeing, and our focus has immediately become uh, it's been focused on protecting our employees, protecting our clients, protecting our technology, protecting our business partners, but most important, protecting our business. So when we talk about protecting our employees, of course, with social distancing, we're having to provide opportunities for people to work remotely. And that means we have an increased reliance on the availability of digital information. If I need to go access those contracts, or if I need to access um, that that client's information, I need it to be there right now so I can do my job from my home or wherever I'm doing my work. Email, I think a lot more of us are relying on email than we ever have before. And then the transfer of digital information. If I've got to be able to take that contract and then email it to you or send you, I need to be able to rely on the digital pathways to make sure that that information gets where it's going. And then we're looking at solutions to facilitate these. I can tell you our ITSM teams are juggling all of the demands of companies who now are using Zoom or new technologies to try to replace face-to-face meetings or other types of things that we had to do during our normal operations. And then just the normal headaches of trying to get people connected from a multitude of locations, whether that's at your home or your backyard, or someone works out in the country and they've got less than ideal bandwidth. So all of these things are things that we're having to juggle now that we've not previously had to rely on. And because of the sudden onset of this pandemic, a lot of times we're having to make these changes without the necessary resources, without the necessary training, without the necessary budget or testing. Someone says, well, we need webinar software, or we need a webinar solution. Okay, great. Let's go Google that. Okay, we found something out there. Okay, let's just install it and run it and figure it out while we're going. And all of these have dramatic implications for the risk for our organizations. So again, I want to talk a little bit about the threat model and how we really measure risk for your organization. But in these three circles that you're seeing, a successful attack is the overlap of these three areas. These areas consist of the system susceptibility, number two, the threat accessibility, and then the threat capabilities. So the value to your attacker. If you have banking information or you've got intellectual property, that may be of high value to an attacker. And so your systems are going to be more susceptible because you have something that someone wants. If you're introducing vulnerabilities, now someone's more able to attack those systems and get what they want. Under the threat accessibility, if we're increasing our attack surface, if we're extending part of our network into a new location or into the cloud, or we're installing new software that makes our systems accessible from people's homes, now we're that much more accessible to the attackers. And then third, from the threat capabilities, if there are new tools, if there's new resources, or what we're going to talk about today, new techniques, we're that much more, the attackers are that much more capable of attacking us. So again, a vulnerability is just a weakness in your information systems or your procedures or internal controls that could be exploited by an attacker. So again, you may have a server that's unpatched, or a server that is reached end of life, and Microsoft is not releasing patches for that. Or you may have a firewall with firmware that's not been updated. All of those are vulnerabilities. Or you could have a lack of a defined process when you transfer information. So if your CEO tells one of your billing representatives, hey, I'm going to send you an email and transfer money, that could be a lack of a proper internal control. And we see those types of things exploited all the time. As far as the accessibility, again, we talked a little bit about the increased attack surface and the logical access, but I wanted to really show this slide because it's during times like this where we really see shadow IT come out from behind the shadows. If Susan needs to have a call with an important client and there's no webinar software, she may just go download something and set it up herself. Shadow IT is any unauthorized implementation of information technology for your organization. And it's at times like this where people with the best of intentions are doing this type of stuff. They're installing software, they're making connections to your network, to your data, to your resources that you or your IT staff know nothing about. And when we do these types of things, we're implementing a dramatic level of risk for our organization. We need to be able to understand what we're doing, what changes we're making, how this is impacting the accessibility of our resources and our network. And then ideally, once we identify what those changes are, we're analyzing how those things are being used or misused, if you will. And then the capabilities, again, the capabilities that we're seeing now are dramatically increasing because of the global nature of COVID-19. We're seeing we're seeing a lot of different attacks, and I'll show you some more data here in just a second around COVID-19. And these are being used by both cyber criminals and nation state threat actors. And so this is going to be very important as we move forward, because the maturity of countries and nation states when they leverage cyber attacks are so advanced that it's very, very difficult to try to identify or stop those types of attacks. So when we look at just malicious domains associated with COVID-19, we can see that over the past 2 months, there has been a dramatic increase in the registration of domains associated with this. And this is not just any domain. These are malicious domains that are associated with phishing, credential theft, and delivery of malware. And we can see that the bad actors have not missed a beat in taking advantage of COVID-19. Also, when we look at the exploits and malware that's being studied by researchers, the use of COVID-19 or coronavirus in the delivery of those malware has also dramatically skyrocketed over the past 2 months. And if you're watching the news, I'm sure you've seen a lot of different coronavirus type attacks, whether it's cruise ships who've already been hit by coronavirus and now they're being targeted by cyber attackers. The World Health Organization, again, um, you know, different types of providers who provide both medical, uh, pharmaceutical, uh, news outlets. We're seeing just across the spectrum, companies are being attacked when they're already busy trying to deal with the impact of the coronavirus. Again, who are the prime targets that are the most at risk now? Well, financial services, because they're focused on the recession, the stock markets, and they're already fighting the battle on those fronts. And it seems like when they're turning their back on cybersecurity, that's when they're most susceptible to cyber attack. Again, medical suppliers and manufacturers, we've seen counterfeit products already with masks and ventilators and information and phishing emails sent out about those types of counterfeit products. We've seen arrests made with companies purporting to offer this stuff, and really they're just trying to steal people's money. And these suppliers and manufacturers are dealing with the increased demand for these products. So they're already having to try to deal with working remotely, increasing their output, combating the fear of counterfeit products in the market, and at the same time also becoming more cyber resilient because of the changes they're making to their networks. And then government and media outlets, again, these people we rely on to relay accurate information, but at the same time they're combating disinformation about coronavirus and COVID-19. And according to an InfraGard release yesterday, the FBI and Department of Homeland Security is combating hate speech around COVID-19. People are trying to attribute this to faith-based organizations, and InfraGard is taking it as a serious threat to these organizations, that when people start to come out of their social distancing and go back to churches, that we're going to see an increase in violence at these locations. The government and these media outlets are having to combat this stuff, and having to deal with the cyber attacks that we're seeing now, focusing on them. The bad actors know when you're busy doing other stuff, and they want to take advantage of your limited resources. So I just wanted to list just a few, and this is just the tip of the iceberg, but these are typically the same tricks, but have been rolled up in some type of COVID-19 theme to make it more effective. Again, we're seeing all types of malware, Emotet, Baby Shark. We've seen backdoors. We're seeing phishing emails offering information on how to make masks at home, information on what you need to know about how COVID really started, or I think there's a rumor that 5G networks are the source of COVID-19. You're seeing all sorts of emails around this, phishing emails. You're seeing malware. You're seeing these websites that purport to have this information that are delivering drive-by downloads. So we're seeing, again, the same types of tricks, but they're being rolled up in a theme of COVID-19. So the table here on the left is it really shows the concerns from security professionals from 2 months ago, prior to really this wave of COVID-19. And you can see security professionals are concerned about computers getting infected with malware through email. You can see them through web browsing. You can see phishing, spear phishing, ransomware, uh, data leakage. Again, all the things we've already talked about in the top 5 cyber threats facing organizations now. These things are amplified even more because of the global nature and the global interest in information around COVID-19. In the upper right-hand corner, because account takeovers are so prevalent, I just wanted to show a little bit about sometimes the emails come from your trusted partners, sometimes they come from employees, but most of the time they come from strangers, and we're going to continue to see that pattern. But just in the past 30 days, we've seen a dramatic increase in these account takeover, ATO-based attacks. Again, people are working from home. They're using non-corporate systems that don't have corporate levels of protection. And you can see that the number of account takeover attacks through email to try to steal credentials is dramatically rising. So I just want to go back a little bit to this threat model that I showed you. Again, when we talked about system susceptibility and their vulnerabilities, we see that we're installing new software and we're making ourselves more vulnerable. We're adding vulnerabilities to our network, and that's expanding the circle of system susceptibility. And then from threat accessibility, we're increasing the attack surface. We have people working from home. These home computers are now logical extensions of our network, and those can be attacked to gain access into our network. So the threat accessibility circle is increasing. And then lastly, the threat capability circle is increasing because the techniques are using COVID-19, and there's global interest in this. And so if someone receives an email about how do I create my own mask at home, they're much more likely to click on it. So what does this mean? The threat for us and our organization is dramatically increasing. The risk is dramatically increasing. So we know that there's a lot of problems out there with networks. They've been out there. But what can we do right now to try to protect ourselves through this pandemic? Well, first of all, we can leverage VPNs. And so what are VPNs? It's a virtual private network connection. It is a tunnel between your home computer and your work computer, and it encrypts all the traffic there. If you can use multi-factor authentication, even better. So that allows you to protect this type of connection, so not just anyone can connect to your network. And if someone's sniffing traffic, if you've got multiple computers at your employee's house and some of those computers have spyware or other types of malware that can sniff or sniff traffic, the VPN plus the mobile multi-factor authentication provides additional layers of security to help protect that information. Again, we want to make sure that we understand the impacts of VPN traffic. If you've got 500 employees and 500 employees start trying to connect to your network from home, you're going to see some performance problems. So you want to make sure that you understand what the implications of that are. And just because people are employees doesn't necessarily mean they all need to remotely connect to work. You need to start thinking about who really needs to have access and who does not. Another thing that we can do is keep systems updated. Hopefully you have a patch management program in place, but this means patching the operating systems on your workstations, on your laptops, on your servers, patching your business applications, patching those third-party applications that are so helpful like Zoom or Adobe. All of those, all the software that you install on your systems has to be patched, and we want to make sure that we have a program in place to patch all of these. And lastly, I mentioned earlier firmware. So firmware is dedicated software to specific hardware elements, whether it's a firewall, a switch, a printer, it could be a DVR system. All of these systems run an internal software that has to be updated through firmware updates. So we want to make sure that our patch management program is addressing all these. If we don't, we're going to have holes in our network that allow attackers to easily access our data and our resources. One way to find this information is to use vulnerability scans. So we want to scan both inside and outside of our network. So an internal scan would be run from within your network, and we're going to scan all of the IP addresses or anything that has a network address and see what vulnerabilities are associated with them, so that we list them out and we can start to methodically go through them and make sure they're patched. But you also want to scan your network from outside your network, so you're seeing what vulnerabilities exist in your firewalls, in the perimeter of your network security. Another thing that we should consider doing is extending professional services to users' home devices. Again, this includes antivirus, this includes patching, and it may even include advanced EDR, or endpoint detection and response solutions. EDR I like as a really good solution because it can detect abnormal or risky behavior. It can detect malware that runs in memory. It can detect odd connections that your system's making, so if it's performing reconnaissance on other systems. And again, remember that most organizations can't afford to buy laptops and computers for users to take home, so they're relying on their employees to use their home systems. And employees don't always do the smartest things with their home computers. We understand that a lot of people like to steal music, steal movies, and most of the most popular TV shows, like I like The Walking Dead. Well, The Walking Dead TV shows that you download illegally almost always have malware embedded in those videos. So when I watch the video, I've now installed malware on my systems. Most home systems lack the corporate level of strength to detect and protect against those types of attacks. So this is something that we should really consider if we're going to allow users to connect on a consistent basis from their home systems. Another thing that we really need to be doing, if we haven't already, is we need to have a security awareness program. And as part of this program, we need to train our team to understand what types of risks are out there, what types of threats are out there. We need to explain to them the proper practices and the consequences for not following these practices. And once we do this, we can typically see a dramatic increase in your cyber resiliency. Our security awareness training, we also provide fish testing, so we can measure the effectiveness of the security awareness training program. Another thing that we should consider that I see as a fairly common problem is most companies don't leverage role-based access. So if Bob doesn't need access to the HR data, don't give it to him. If Jill doesn't need access to the payroll data, don't give it to her. You need to segment your network. You need to leverage the roles and the permission structure in your Windows-based network that locks down data and resources to only those people who need it to perform their jobs. And this level of segmentation becomes very important when people are working from home. Because if I have access to all resources remotely, if my account's compromised, that attacker now has access to all resources as well. And the impact to the company is exponentially greater than if I only had access to limited resources. And then lastly, but I think this is the most important, is continuous monitoring. Again, continuous monitoring is really going to identify any type of inconsistency with any type of compliance or risk management features that we've employed in our network. So if we have a policy that doesn't allow people to access I don't know, email on a Saturday night, and all of a sudden we see someone accessing email on a Saturday night, we're going to see that with continuous monitoring. If we have a policy that doesn't allow people to change their password 3 times in 1 hour, again, we're going to see that in a continuous monitoring approach. Again, this also allows us to examine those type of network interactions, things that are both planned and, in this case, unexpected changes. So if we see all of a sudden someone's accessing the payroll data at 3 a.m. on a Saturday, this is would be spotted through continuous monitoring. And if we see shadow IT, someone installing software, continuous monitoring is going to see that. This is how we know who's making changes and who is touching our data, our network, our resources. And this is something that we really need to do to make sure that we are minimizing cybersecurity risk. And lastly, when we're spotting the cyber threats in real time, we now have the ability to proactively manage those threats. We have the ability to spot holes that are existing or have been recently added to the network. It's very common when companies make network changes or they migrate their data to the cloud or they move their email. When those types of changes happen, we see someone inadvertently introducing a vulnerability that didn't previously exist. A common example is the default settings for Azure cloud servers have RDP, remote desktop, enabled. So you can basically remote directly to that server from anywhere in the world. RDP is inherently unsafe, but it's a default setting in Microsoft cloud servers. And so when someone goes to set up a server and they're not familiar with all of the default settings that are insecure that they have to turn off, they immediately introduce a major vulnerability in their network. Continuous monitoring sees that server spin up, it sees that vulnerability being introduced and allows you to address that in real time. Well, I do appreciate the time today. Morgan, why don't we take a few minutes and answer any questions that anyone may have?
Absolutely. So thanks, Delano, for sharing that information. And like I said, absolutely so relevant to the times that we're in. So we do want to open it up to questions. There is a Q&A button at the bottom of your screen, so feel free to submit any questions there. We've got a few minutes left and would love to answer any questions that you might have. I do see one question come through so far. And so Delano, if an external company user is invited to access a company's Teams and they use a home computer or personal email, is there a risk to that company's team files, to other MS Team user systems, or to that company's system?
So yes, really there's two issues. So I'm not a fan of using Teams to connect to external entities because you can start to copy and paste or grab files and pull them out of someone's Teams once you're connected and those data, that information shared with you. So it is a great collaborative tool, but those same features that allow collaboration allow you to exfiltrate data from the Teams, and so I'm not a fan of that. You also have the ability to share files that may have malicious content or like a macro, like an Excel document that's got a malicious macro installed. So those are things that I would be concerned with. I understand the need to share this information there, but you need to make sure that there's that you understand the risk and that you have some appropriate measure in place to address that.
Awesome, thanks. We've got another question that says, if you are a small business and don't have access to a VPN, how would you proceed for security?
Okay, so I would challenge if you're a small business, you should have a business grade firewall. All business grade firewalls do have VPN capabilities, but I understand not all businesses have a business grade firewall. I would strongly recommend you to get one, but in the event that you don't and you need something now, I would look online for a secure remote access solution that allows you to install uh, uh, a install an agent on a computer at the office that you need to connect to, and just make sure you turn on all the security features. You make sure it's password protected. You make sure that it's not beaconing out to the internet, that you have to know how to connect to it from your system. So you have a secure point-to-point connection.
Wonderful. And I think we've got time for one or two more questions. So the next question is, for those companies that utilize third-party support and rely on their external connections and their own security settings, is this seen as a high risk?
Again, it's important to understand that you don't hand off the risk to a third party. You still own the risk. So it's important that you're asking the right questions of these third party support providers. Ask them what they're doing to protect you. This is part of your agreement with them. You need to know, you need to ask the right questions and make sure that they are doing the right things to protect you in these cases. Sometimes third parties don't necessarily take the most secure methods to protect you, and so you need to find that out. You need to make sure you're partnered with the right people who are taking the right precautions to secure you. But it starts with you owning the risk and you having the right to ask very detailed questions about what they're doing to protect you.
Absolutely. And last question, and something that I'm super interested in, is a lot of companies have been doing teleconferencing and video conferencing. What video conferencing system do you recommend, or what steps should you take to ensure that your video conferencing is secure?
Well, I don't I don't recommend any particular vendor over the other, but most vendors, including Zoom, which I see is mentioned in this question, have security features. Um, it's Morgan and I were talking about before this started. We actually have a blog coming out. It may already be out on how to leverage the security features in Zoom to protect yourself. And I would like to actually share that link with you. I'll talk to our marketing team and see if we can't get that to you, Aaron. But there are security features and all of the conferencing solutions that I know about. It's just not always apparent on what you need to do to set that up. But we do have an article about securing Zoom.
Wonderful. And I think coming from Haley at Corsica just messaged us and said that blog is up. And so we will get that link out to all of our viewers, as well as link it below when we post it on YouTube. So again, Delano, thanks so much for all of this information, so relevant to the times that we're in. And as our industry, has their head down fighting this virus, cybersecurity isn't something that's always at the forefront of your mind. So we appreciate you telling us this information, sharing this information with our attendees. And yes, this video will be posted on YouTube at a later time, so feel free to go and reference it for any additional information that you may have. But we do want to say, Delano, thank you to you and Cybersecurity, or Corsica Technologies and the cybersecurity team there, for being such great partners of SE Bio and being such a great supporters of our industry. So we thank you.
Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Well, to all of our attendees, thanks for tuning in, and make sure to check out our next webinar. That will be next Friday the 17th. Yes, next Friday the 17th at 10 a.m. And it's going to be all about hiring and retaining a life science workforce during COVID-19. And we will feature HR leaders from Abbott in the upstate and Thorne down in the low country. So we hope you will join us next week. And again, thanks for tuning in, and we hope you'll be back soon.